Hi everyone, thank you for coming tonight to the first panel of Lent term and to one of our first events of the term generally. It's great to see such a nice sort of big audience. So we have 3 female heads of houses in discussion today about their experiences in the role. I'll just start by giving a brief introduction for each of the speakers, and then we'll get into questions, and there'll be time at the end for an audience Q&A. So first of all, we have Professor Susan Smith, who is the Mistress of Carlton College and has been since October 2009. She's also an Honorary Fellow of Social and Economic Geography at Cambridge University, and she works on housing and various areas of inequality and is interested in the relationship of states, markets, and the ethics of care. Then we have Sonita Alleyne, who is the 41st Master and first woman to lead Jesus College since its foundation in 1496. She's a businesswoman and entrepreneur. Brought up in East London, Sonita studied for her undergraduate degree in philosophy at Fitzwilliam College. A career in radio followed, including founding the production company Somethin Else, which she led as chief executive from 1991 to 2009. She was awarded an OBE for her services to broadcasting in 2004, and she's also the director and founder of the YES programme, which is an online careers scheme which gives school pupils an insight into how classroom skills translate to real-world careers. And then finally we have Pippa Rogerson, who is the Master of Gonville and Caius College and has been since 2018. She's also a reader in private international law in the Faculty of Law, and during her time at Caius and Cambridge for over 30 years, Pippa has been variously a lecturer, director of the Law Tripos, director of studies in law, a tutor, a university advocate, and a member of the University Council and General Board. She's presently the college sexual assaults and harassment contact, and before coming to Cambridge to take her PhD, Pippa qualified as a solicitor in a Magic Circle city law firm. So I'll start by just asking each of the panellists to give a brief introduction or a narration of their journey to becoming master or mistress of their college, and then what they think the most important part of their role, what the most important job in that role is.
Are you asking me first?
Yeah.
Well, I'm actually an academic, and that's been my career. So I'm a career academic. And I actually think it's quite important that some heads of house are academic scholars and others aren't. We've got business people, journalists, some people elect diplomats, some people wish they'd elect diplomats actually once they've got the one they have. So it is a really big mix, but I think it's really important that some heads of house are academics and career academics, and so that's my story anyway, and that's the background that I've got. I have to ask the college why they decided to elect an academic, but it has been traditional at Girton that the vast majority of mistresses have had some kind of scholarly background, so that's kind of an interesting thing. But probably more interesting than that, to me, possibly more interesting to you, is why would an academic want to go into that kind of job? And quite often, I think there's a general academic route, and it goes something like, be a lecturer, be a senior lecturer, be a professor, be a dean or a vice principal, be a principal, and then maybe later on be a head of house, something like that. And I'm very pleased to have missed that out. And I think the reason I'm so pleased to have missed it out is that I'm very conscious that as your career goes on sometimes as an academic, you find yourself further and further away from the students. And although I hadn't actually thought of applying to be head of house when I was approached by a headhunter for my present job, as soon as I realised what it meant, as soon as I realised that it was actually a job where you could have a significant say, you could influence higher education debates, you could intervene, but you could actually still be pretty close to students. You could actually have a role in engaging with students, in helping students to do projects, really to be quite close with students. That was really what swung it for me. So I suppose I'd have to say that I think one of the most important parts of the job is about relationships with students and supporting student projects. But my other answer to that question is really colleges can do quite special things, I think, that some other kind of higher education institutions can't. They can create a bit of space, a bit of levity in a fairly top-down kind of system. I think you can be kind. I think that's really important. I think having fun, scholarship is about all-round development. of people. And sure, we should take it seriously, we should be absolutely excellent. I mean, what could be more important than a fantastic education? But we should have fun, we should do great things in addition to our studies, and I think that's something that I think is an important part of my job. Hope that's not too much, but anyway, over to you.
Yeah, no, I echo fun. I think that's really, really important. I think my journey to becoming master at Jesus College started when I was an undergraduate, and I had a really good time. And as I progressed, obviously I set up my own company, then I went plural, I was on various boards like the BBC Trust and London Legacy Development Corporation, National Employment Panel, and you're on that board and everyone kind of chats and they say what they do, and I'd be on the board and there'd be people who would be like, oh, I'm master of a college, and in the back of my mind I always was like, oh, that's really interesting, how would you get that job? So in a way I was kind of almost there, knowing that it was something that I was interested in before I got the call from a headhunter. And then when I did get the call, I was probably 60%, yeah, okay, I'm interested enough to, write my letter and go along and talk about it. And for me, it's really about that. Colleges are part of our sort of modern world, but it's the ability to be able to go into an organisation and analyse it a little bit. Take your time. I'm taking my time. I'm really talking to a lot of people and getting to learn a lot about the college, but really answer that question of why should you have a college? How does it actually really, really fit? How does it help people have that foundation of fun and give them the ability to treat college as a home whilst they've got their family, they've got their faculty, they've got the university. And the thing that I am really excited about, which I've always done in my life, is look at community. How does that modern community work? And it's very special, very unique. I think I've landed in a really, really good place. And how does that community work? And how does the community give you the strength to have a really great academic life, but also give you the strength to have a bit of agency, to feel that you are not just being dragged along by the rapids of a river, which is started probably when you went to school and you sat on a mat and the teacher pointed at you and said, right, you can talk. And then went to GCSE and A-levels and you're doing your degree. But that sense of like you're in your own canoe and you're paddling, you've got your sense of agency, you know what you want to do. And I've had some really nice times when I've been here, and I think last term, because I've only been master for one term, I sat in a room with some alumni who had been to Jesus 70 years ago, and one of them, it was nice lunch, and one of them said, oh, Master, the thing that, I'd really be pleased if you did was work on careers, because when I was a student, I didn't know what I wanted to do when I finished. And I just thought that's such a continuum. I admit I did philosophy. I didn't know what I wanted to do when I finished. But I want people to be able to face the future and face that kind of, the leaving of having been a really, really good time, but face it not with trepidation, but with a bit of curiosity. A bit of kind of, the whole world is there waiting for me, and that's just brilliant. And so to answer the question in terms of what I've learned since I've been there, the thing that I've realised I am the custodian of a community which is over 500 years old, and I get it for 10 years, and I've got to not muck it up.
Well, I certainly echo that. I had a slightly more, it might look more straightforward entry to the mastership, because I was a fellow at Keys for 30 years before I was elected master, and it is the job I never wanted to do. It is, it's a very, very wide-ranging job. Yes, there is a part of my job that, and some of the nicest bits of it, are thinking about students, thinking about what the college community means, how we can enhance what we do in college for our students. But there's a lot of other things that we do, whether it's as a college, having a relationship with the university and what's proper for the university to be offering, and the university is very, very complex arrangements between the university and the colleges. The way in which, as a master, you're sort of the figurehead, really, for anything that comes down the pike from the outside world. And the outside world could be friendly and you're alum, or the outside world could be more questioning, say, the press, the government, our regulators, and that as a master of a Cambridge college, you get asked to participate in debates and to put yourself out there to say what you think should happen in various cases. And I don't know about the rest of you, but I certainly find dealing with the press, the media, the most difficult part of my job, because there is a sense that they would like to present Cambridge University, Gonville and Caius College in a particular light, which I think is perhaps outdated, or I hope was outdated. And so I'm often having to deal with those sorts of issues. So some of it's external, some of it is fundraising, talking to our alum, doing development, because it's a very expensive thing to run a Cambridge college. I'm sure you all know that your fees of £9,250 is about half the cost of your university education here, and the colleges provide half that cost and the university provides the other half of the extra. So we have to go and bang the drum and make sure that the supervision system is continued, the tutorial system is continued, welfare is continued, sports fields are kept up, music, debating, volunteering of all sorts, all the things that are really valuable, I think, in a Cambridge education. Having fun is not always free, I think. So I'm unashamed about going out and saying, we do fabulous things here, so please help us continue to do these fabulous things, but that's part of my job. And the other part of my job, I absolutely agree with Sonita. In fact, custos, or custodian, is very much what the Keys Master is traditionally known as, the custos, and we go back to 1348. And it is a custodian of a community to try and keep the best of the community going, and to continue our mission in education, religion, learning and research. That's what we try and do to a really, really high standard, at the same time as having a bit of fun.
Brilliant. So you mentioned Custo as one of the titles that masters get known as, and that brings me on to what I was thinking about. My burning question is about the name and whether you got to choose whether you were a master or a mistress. So we always have one mistress, two masters. I think some colleges have presidents. Do you think it's important that, for example, at Girton, we preserve the legacy of an all-female college, or other colleges, say, reappropriate the masculine term? What do you think we should call masters or mistresses, and why?
Who do you want to start with?
We'll start with Pippa.
Okay. Well, I get asked this question a lot. And I suppose I'm not a linguist, but it seems to me that names and terms are signifiers, and it depends on context and it depends on culture. So if you talk about Keys going back to 1348, when everybody spoke in Latin, in fact they had to go on speaking in Latin until the 16th century in college, the term there was magister. And that's a Latin term that we translate roughly as master, but it actually means teacher, which I'm quite happy with. And as I said, Keys himself, when he did the statutes in the 16th century, sort of used it as custos, magister, interchangeably. So I'm sort of neutral about it because I don't think in the context it's a particularly gendered term. I think it does just mean teacher, custodian. And it's in the statutes, and if I'd wanted to make a fuss about it, I could possibly have made a fuss about it, but I just decided you have to pick your battles. That was not something that I felt so strongly about, that I wanted to use a more neutral term like warden or principal. And, I was sort of happy with it. But I think it's, each college has its own culture and its own history, and I think each master probably has, or head of house has their own decision on that to make.
Sonita?
Well, I applied for the role of Master of Jesus College. It was quite clear on the application form what the role was that I was applying for. And I think if I'd wanted to change it, I should have changed it at that point and said, yes, I like the idea of the role, but can you call me something else? No, I'm fine with it. It sits comfortably with me. I don't mind being called master. Quite like it, actually. And we have master's degrees. You get your masters. I agree. There's people. It's really about who you are, and And actually, for a lot of people, there are people who've been working in the college for years, actually, and they're comfortable saying that. And I kind of think you join an organisation, and I enjoy to kind of make people feel uncomfortable, or make them think, oh, it's all change. Let's change other things, change how everyone relates to each other, and make sure everyone is having a good time. And also people will respect you for who you are and what you bring to the role. So I'm kind of pretty okay about it.
What do you think? Because you might have a different perspective, so you have a different name.
So, Girton's been mixed for 40 years, as I'm sure you all know. It's a mixed college and a widening participation college. But it was a college founded for women. In fact, it was the college for women. In fact, it was the only college for women for a little while until Newnham was also established. So it's the first institution in the UK to admit women to study and take exams to degree level on the same terms as men. And it was established for a reason. And it wasn't easy. It was a terrible struggle, and I'm sure I don't need to go over that history for you. I tried to find out actually a little bit about the history of the decision to use the word mistress, and it seems that quite a lot of paperwork has been lost. But what is clear is that they were definitely looking for a kind of feminine, female ending. So they considered dean. So they discovered that the feminine would be duenna, and they thought that would sound a bit awkward. So they ended up actually with mistress, but they chose it really quite deliberately to make a point. And I think at the moment, in my mind, there is something quite special about a college founded for women. All our futures will be made in different ways, and that's the project, isn't it? It's a work in progress. But there are some interesting things. We had some discussions only last year in our anniversary year with some of our colleagues from the Seven Sisters, Vassar particularly, which went mixed 50 years ago. And maybe there are some things that colleges founded for women can bring to the table. So I think being the mistress is just fine, actually. It suits me absolutely well. I've really enjoyed that. I think in the statutes there might be a provision for someone to take a different title if they wanted to. If I absolutely nail my colours to the flag, I hope they don't, because I think it says something very important to have the Mistress of Girton about the whole history of the university and about the women who really did struggle, for all of the women in this room, to get where we were. So I like the term. I think it conveys a lot of that history. It causes me no problem at all to be the mistress. I think it's a very special and privileged office to occupy. So I hope we keep it. I mean, maybe one day in the future, all colleges will go for more gender neutral heads of house. And when that happens, I think maybe Girton will do the same. But I really hope it doesn't do it first, for all those reasons.
Yeah, so definitely nice to preserve the legacy. And I think consistent across all three, just keeping what's there as part of the tradition. And then you make the role what you want to make it. So my next question is, what has been your biggest success? So I know some of you have been in the role longer than others. Sonita, you've maybe had less time. I'm sure you've had many successes so far. So what would you say has been your biggest success?
It's only been one term, but I feel that consistent with the things that I hold dear. I talked about that, facing the future without trepidation, facing the future with curiosity and verve and excitement. I'm conscious of changing the narrative and the conversation within the college to focus on careers a bit, to focus on the fact that the world is changing, and actually to respond to what students want, what things they want to do, and they don't want to feel that they want to explore and have time to explore different sorts of careers that they might not have thought about before. So what's been really good is having that conversation and actually, in a way, delivering it. Tomorrow, we have my fourth business off conversations where I invite people in to kind of talk about a variety of careers in a very, very personable, honest setting where people can come in and talk about things. So tomorrow we have the top casting director and they cast all 5 series of Peaky Blinders, and I love Peaky Blinders, so I'm looking forward to that one. We've had president of Viacom, CBS, in comms, and the person who set up Water Presents, and screenwriters, and someone from the city coming to talk honestly about what it's really like to be working in the city. And I think it's nice that for me has been a really good success. And then also just getting to know everyone. I like going up and talking to people. And I remember before I moved to Cambridge, I remember saying to my partner, really great, when we grow older, we can be somewhere really sociable, and we can meet lots of people, and we're living the dream, we're having a really good time, it's just fantastic. And just really getting to know people. I started a series of the third year reviews, which are 15 to 20 minutes with every single third year, to basically say, what are you doing next? How was it for you? And how can we help you? And that's been really, really illuminating. I'm only up to G at the moment, so 100 to go. But it's just brilliant. And even though at sort of 3 o'clock in the afternoon, when I have been working since 8 a.m. and met those people, I still meet a new person, and I still just smile and go, "Hi, how are you doing?" And and there's a real energy from meeting people. And my background is in media, so I love stories. I think that's why I went into media. And I kind of think of everyone, like everyone in this room, is a story. You're an adventure. Your past is an adventure, your future is an adventure. And so I think that's the biggest thing for me, is just being in that space where that can happen, and talking about careers and delivering on that, and being able to think about that. There's still a way to go, but I feel like I've had a good start.
It isn't great as a head of house. I think you do get a chance to have lots of ideas, so that's great to hear. One of the things that I love about colleges, it's also one of the things that I find most frustrating about them, is that they're self-governing communities of scholars. It kind of means that everybody is in charge, everybody apart from moi. So it really is a collective enterprise. And so I was thinking, what's one of the really great things we've done as a college, over the last few years? And I would say it is some of the events that we've run and some of the ideas we've had around our 150th anniversary. There's a lot I could say about that, but there's also quite a lot on the web, so don't let me bore you. But to really think about not just the early days, but also the way the college developed. I mean, can you imagine? It was just sort of 5 students on October the 16th, 1869. 5 students. To imagine you could create a permanent institution of the University of Cambridge from that kind of starting point in 1869 is just incredible. So I think one of the fantastic things about this last year has been the way we've been able to look at what some of our women and men have achieved, to see, to bring out hidden histories, people who have just done remarkable things that you've probably never heard of, but they've really made a difference. And just to have that sense, as I think we do, that quite ordinary people can come along, can be here, and then go on to do quite extraordinary things. I think to chart that, as we have done last year, it's just been an excuse really to look at that process, has just been so absolutely amazing. And it reminds me that I don't know how ordinary people in this room feel, but if you feel ordinary, the thought that by going through this kind of system, by having a great education, you can go on and do the most extraordinary things, it's just really been a remarkable thing to discover and reflect on. So that's one of the best things that I've done while I've been here.
Yeah, well, I can echo that, because I went to one or two of the events. They were really, really fantastic about Girton. I suppose mine's a bit more prosaic, really. I mean, Susan's been talking about the community of scholars and the way in which, some of you may be under the misapprehension that the masters can do things. Well, I'm certainly not in charge where I am. Some people talk about herding cats. I think it was Henry Kissinger who said, that actually the White House was a doddle after Harvard because, the people are so vicious because the stakes are so small. I think he got it wrong, actually. It's that the stakes are so personal. And actually, I'm not suggesting that my fellowship are vicious in any way at all, but it's just very principled, very intellectual debate and discussion about issues. I mean, really at a very high level, it can be a little bit wearing if you're trying to achieve some sort of outcome. So I started as master with no senior bursar, no senior tutor, no PA, no housekeeper, no comms officer. The development director and the director of music have left in the first year. So those are some pretty serious and important roles to fill around the college to try and make sure that we have a good system, good process, good procedures that means that everybody else can go on and do the fabulous things that they do, whether it's students that they know that the senior tutor's there to support them, whether the senior bursar is making the money, whether it's the director of music doing music or the development director bringing in the money. And so for me in the first year to try and make sure that the right people were appointed to those roles and then to support them into doing their best work and at the same time as trying to herd the cats has been the really biggest challenge. But I love people, and like Sonita, it's quite unusual in an academic, I think. I really absolutely love people. So, and I love to see people grow at all levels, whether it's the students, whether it's the staff, whether it's the fellowship. I may not be brilliant myself, but I'm a very good facilitator. I just absolutely, that's something that I've really enjoyed doing, but it has been a real challenge.
I think it's really interesting to hear you talk about the appointing the people around you, because one of the things that I was interested in is the kind of gender balance of the structure beneath you as a master. So there's quite a big emphasis on, or we're very aware of having diversity at the top, but I wonder whether there's a kind of structure underneath that remains. Like, should we be looking at the roles underneath you, or do you feel that the roles underneath you are like well represented or getting better representation?
I don't know whether bursars would quite like to be cast like that. I think they drive the agenda. I don't know whether you mean senior officers and like the senior tutors,
domestic bursars,
yeah. Well, diversity is a key principle, isn't it? We actually, Girton has had an all-women senior officer team until this term for about the last 6 or 7 years, and I think in my time only one member has been a man, the senior tutor when I first came, and the bursar now. So they're a great team. They're a great team. They got there because they were the best. Should they be more diverse? I think we should be much more diverse in higher education, much more diverse in fellowships. It's a project.
I've only just arrived, and everyone was in post, and I'm. In terms of like the 4 officers, including myself as one of the 4 officers, we have a good working relationship, and they're really brilliant. They're really, really good. I happen to have a male president, a male bursar, a male senior tutor, but those roles change, and they'll change over time, and then we'll see where we're at. But I do think the college is very live to the issue of looking at diversity across the posts. I'm thinking about staff posts and heads of department as well. I think there's quite a good split, I think. But it is one of those things that you just have to keep working at, really. But I'm pleased with where we're at. I'm very pleased with the people that I'm working with. I don't think that in any sort of, you mentioned the kind of the fellowship as well. I think that's something which could be more diverse across all of Cambridge, actually. It's a kind of understanding of how you achieve that and how things move. So with kind of one term in, it's kind of, Cambridge is like a wonderful, huge, fat onion. Go with it. Go with it. It's like a huge, fat onion, and I'm just beginning to peel off the layers and kind of start to sort of see all around, see what's going on. So ask me in a couple of years' time.
Well, I'm looking at my notes so that I actually have the stats on something. So Keys has 117 fellows and bi-fellows, and about 29 identify as women. We've got 1 transgender fellow, and we've only got about 7 in the ethnic minorities. So I'm really not proud of those statistics, actually. It's true that I think unusually there are a few colleges like mine which you go on being a fellow after 70. If you've been a fellow for 20 or 30 years, at the time you retire at 70, you go on as a full fellow. Voting, rooms, the whole works. Now, there are a few colleges around Cambridge that still do that, in effect, no retirement age. But of course, that then means we only admitted women into the undergraduate and fellowship in 1979, so 40 years later. But even so, 29 of, say, 50 or 60 is not good enough, really. We now have a woman master, we've had a woman senior bursar, we've got a woman dean in chaplain, we've got a woman as an operations director, we have had a woman senior bursar, but currently the senior bursar, the senior tutor, the president are all men. My own view is that person is the most important thing, and rather than gender or other sorts of diversity. But what's really key is to be absolutely clear and transparent that the necessary skills or attributes for the role can be put in a way that are not gendered and are not racist. And thinking just very, very carefully that we're not just taking on a very sort of almost conscious bias, I mean an unconscious bias about what the person doing a particular role is. And to get back to something I said before, also to try and support and encourage people to grow through into the job that's the right one for them. So in fact, we had some very, very good women just below, so the property endowment manager who's gone off to be bursar at another college. And so in that sort of way, to provide more of a channel to encourage people to do the best job they can, irrespective of anything that I would think of as irrelevant, like gender or race or where you come from or how you speak or any of those sorts of things.
I think we can work harder on our list of people who get through the door to be interviewed, actually. I think we could do that. I think that in a way, I don't know, I'm quite a pragmatic person. I kind of think that's all you want, really. You just want to work a bit harder to be able to apply, to know about something. And then once you're in the room, you need to shine. You know, I think there's a good balance there in terms of where we're at Jesus. But we could all do more, really.
Yeah, but it sounds like we're going in the right direction, so that's good. I think I'm going to open it up to the audience now because I'm sure everyone will have lots of things they want to ask. So does anyone have a question to start us off? We'll go at the back there first.
Hi.
It will just take a second to turn on.
Hello? No, not yet. Oh, yes, okay. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us tonight. My name is Abby. I was just wondering, what role did mentorship play in your career journeys, and how would you sort of give us advice on, approaching mentors or people, especially, in particular women, because perhaps have had similar experiences about sort of mentorship or I guess just, seeking career advice or even sort of life, personal growth advice.
Do you want any of us to answer that?
Yeah. Sorry, I guess it's not a directed question.
Okay.
Yeah.
I feel incredibly fortunate to have had a number of really excellent mentors, champions, supporters. These people do perform slightly different roles. But I don't think I've ever actively gone out to seek anybody out. As I said, I love people and I like gathering a sort of tribe or community around me. So we might talk about a network. But I sometimes think a network sounds a bit self-centered, actually, because that's all what can you do for me. Whereas I think more of building relationships with people. And I've always, as I said, been really, really lucky to be open and friendly in a way that people have been remarkably good at giving me advice or helping me along the way or giving me the nod about certain jobs or anything like that. So I don't think I can give you tips about, well, you go and ask so-and-so. But don't be afraid to ask. They're often very interested. So, yeah, that's probably what I would do. Sonita, have you had?
Yeah, I think from a kind of business perspective, because that's my background, mentorship comes in different forms. When I first set my business up, we started moving into an area where we were looking at mergers and acquisitions and the whole sort of equity and capital, taking over other companies, being approached to be bought by other companies came up. And that was the point at which I thought, well, I'm going to get a non-exec director who has been where we're going and get them on the board. when I very first set up my business at 24, I used to do this thing where in order to get one accountant, I would go and talk to one, then go and talk to another one. And by the time I talked to the third one, I kind of knew what they were talking about. So there's a kind of mentorship in terms of getting information from people. And I would say, in a way, everyone has to be a bit personally entrepreneurial. So I do think that just ask. People don't make the call. It's good to see you, Abby, actually. But yeah, people should ask and think about the person that you really would like to kind of get to talk to. Most people love being interviewed. Most people love actually thinking that they can help. Actually, you get to a certain stage where it's a real joy to help. And what you can't do probably is get into someone's diary in a week's time. That's not going to happen, unless they're doing nothing, in which case don't ask them. But yeah, you can say, can I come and see you? Can I just come and have a chat? I mean, I'm looking at how we do mentoring with alumni, but there's a mentoring which is a very, very long relationship. And sometimes you can go into those mentoring schemes. But there's mentoring which starts with a coffee, with a conversation. And it starts with an ask. It starts with saying, can I come and talk to you? And then I think what's really good is to keep in touch with people, to kind of say, and it depends at what stage you're looking for a mentor. If you're coming out and you're looking for a mentor when you're 16, you're 17, you're looking to kind of get someone who will, be different on your CV as opposed to your teacher. Then go and talk to someone. If you're looking to kind of someone who's a mentor in a particular area or a field that you want to go in, then you should find someone. But it is a relationship, and you should stay in touch. Just pop up and say, hi, I'm doing this. And in terms of networking, I actually believe networking isn't about your network. It's actually a very, very active verb. Yeah, you can have a list as long as your arm of people you know, but the only people who really are important are the ones you've approached. Always make the call, because you never know. Sometimes life surprises you, but activity is the thing that actually leads to something. So I just think always make the ask, and always be open, and people love to stay in touch in terms of what people are doing. And I do a lot of mentoring myself, whether it's like mentoring in particular schemes in the arts or with the GLA, mentoring women. And I have people I mentored 10, 15 years ago who are still friends, and we'll still meet up, we'll still talk about what we want. And it's also a two-way relationship mentoring, because the person who's mentoring probably gets a lot out of being able to stay in touch with you and the areas you're in, and sort of being younger, and kind of, it's a relationship which is a mutual one.
Can I just add sort of slightly from another perspective? Don't get too keyed up if it doesn't work, though. I think I belong to a kind of generation where you would go around frantically asking everybody, what should I do, what should I do? And then you just go and do what you were going to do anyway, and there is an element of that. We also had I don't know if you still got it actually, we had a heads of houses mentoring scheme. Are you in that? We had a heads of houses mentoring scheme. I think that was a scheme that was probably doomed from the start. It's not always, it doesn't really always necessarily work, but I have seen it work really well if you pick one or two people, form a relationship with them, and they can help you through a lot of your career. But don't panic if it doesn't work. I think is get on with it anyway.
Well, in the moment, I think every you got to get something out of every conversation, actually, and similar to the way I worked with accountants. By the time you speak to the third person, actually you might know something, and then you might come across as a bit more impressive, actually, because you've spoken to someone in that sort of field, and you can remember a conversation and have an angle. So I think that's important to kind of collect information, have the conversations, and I really believe in reaching out to people and making connections. As you said, it's really important.
Any other questions? Yeah, you had your hand up before.
Thank you so much for being here. I was wondering if, as female in position of leaderships, you had to deal with challenges linked to discrimination, and how you dealt with it.
I didn't catch that first part of the question.
Like being in a position of leadership as a woman.
Yeah.
Like if you had to deal with challenges to your leadership linked to the fact that you're a woman. Specifically.
I suppose I've only been a master for about a year. One of the things I think I have to be a bit careful about is I suspect many of the women in the room have been at a meeting at which you've said something and that classic sort of private eye cartoon, which is, well, that was a very good point, Dr. Rogerson. Do you think that man down the road can make it so that we can actually hear what the point was? Which is that that it's not always clear that what you say is really being listened to, heard in the right way. And I don't think that now that I'm at the top of the table, it makes any difference from being down the sides. So I have to watch that I really somehow have a sense that what I have said has been heard. Whether that's a challenge or not, it's just something that I'm slightly aware of. I'm certainly particularly aware of it in trying to bring people into a conversation in this self-governing community of scholars. You know, I chair meetings of 60 people or meetings of 15 people regularly, and trying to make sure that everybody is heard, even if they have voices in a different register or they've got a different accent or something like that. I mean, I do find that a challenge. Sonita, right?
Oh, we get stuck on this question. Yeah, I think I probably have. Nothing that's been so challenging that it's stuck in my mind as and that was really awful. You get a bit of sexism. I have sexism and I have racism, so it's, you know, a double whammy. So you get that, but and it's, you know, it'll be in comments that people have said, or, you know, and that's a challenge. And sometimes there's a kind of, oh, okay, here we are again, and you have to kind of go, okay, I push past this now. I think when I was younger, it was probably harder. I think now I've got older and wiser, uglier. It's kind of like, I'm not gonna entertain it really. I understand completely where people is. I've been in that boardroom where you said something and then, you know, 2 seconds later, bloke says the same thing.
That was a very good point.
Yes. And with my female friends on boards, we have this pact where we'll say, that was a good point you made. I think that Nikki said that about two times ago. Well, I get that, and I think that I feel very comfortable in my skin. Actually, I feel very comfortable as a woman. I think that, you know, I think women are very, very strong. Actually, I think sometimes there's this narrative of not being strong. But I think to be in a position of being, you know, master and mistress, you've got there. You're able to kind of have coping strategies. You're able to deal with things. Sometimes I probably just don't bother entertaining it. I'm sort of like, what's the thing that we're really here to talk about? And there's been a couple of instances which have, you know, made me go a little bit tinge of anger since I've been here. You know, I will admit to that. You know, I think one sort of, there's been a few. Just one incident since I've been here that's made me go, ooh. You're all thinking, what was that incident? Go on. But no, it was a kind of, you know, older alumni who'd had a bit too much to drink and said, oh, shall I call you Mistress? And I'm like, okay. I gave him a very, very hard Paddington stare, and he ran away. So that was the only time. But, you know, do you know what? You know, after a few months, that's not too bad. That's not too bad. I dealt with it, you know.
Yeah, I think in colleges, you know, I don't know exactly what leadership is, but it's that you can have ideas and try to make things happen, and you know, and people don't always like them, and things don't always happen. And I think we're a bit agreed here. You know, I think you just get on with it. Actually, to be absolutely honest, so, but it's a great question, and I'm sure in different contexts, you know, there's more to say. But I think for us, for heads of house, you know, have ideas, try and make them work. If it doesn't work out, you know, so to move on to something else.
Yeah, I think and be a woman. I remember my first meeting. My office is very hot, you know, and I think people came in for a meeting and it was like, oh, should we have the door open? I said, yeah, I'm menopausal, keep the door open. You know, so it's just like, just be a woman, just, you know, shock face. Menopause. Oh my God.
Brilliant. Do we have any more questions? I don't need that. Here in the rainbow jumper.
you very much for taking the time to talk. I was wondering, as women, do you feel any kind of, have you felt any kind of, not pressure, but sort of incentive to like implement any kind of schemes or anything like that, or attention that would benefit female students as well? Because before I'd even started at Cambridge, I was offered, like, you know, there were like a few opportunities to apply for bursaries which were specifically for female students. I don't know if you felt that, you know, an incentive as women to like encourage female students in any way like that.
I mean, if I could just leap in there and say, you know, absolutely. I mean, you know, as I say, Girton went mixed 40 years ago, and you know, there's lots of different projects that you want to support to have full inclusion and empowerment of a lot of different constituencies. But I would definitely say for Girton that it absolutely doesn't forget its original mission, and there are lots of areas where empowerment and advancement for women are, you know, it may take a different form now, but, you know, are as important as they've ever been. And I think as a college and as an individual, you know, you really want to try and, you know, innovate, to support, to have schemes. I'm interested in the bursary scheme for women only, because I'm under the understanding that we can't offer those or fundraise for those.
I think Newnham probably could.
Yeah, but not mixed colleges. There's a legal issue there, I think. I actually want to empower everybody who feels they need a bit of a leg up. And there are lots of us who suffer from imposter syndrome, or who have had areas of deprivation, or and whether that's necessarily all women or not, I don't know. But I'd hope that just being a woman and doing a bloody good job as master, that gives something about the sorts of things that I feel are important, actually.
Yeah, and I'm new, so in terms of bursary schemes, and it's still somewhere in the onion. I'm unpeeling, but I would agree with that. You know, own yourself, be yourself, and also you know, making sure that the things that I'm doing, like, you know, the business of there's strong women who are there and seen to be out in the world doing amazing jobs. You know, and also, you know, there's an amazing amount of amazing female academics.
And there's lots of schemes, you know, that it's important to go into, like this Springboard scheme and other things like that. I think we'd all buy into that.
I mean, I've done some things because we're celebrating 40 years of women being admitted to Keys this year. So we have had a whole year of trying to have a certain women's slant on, for example, we're just about to launch a podcast series, which I'm quite proud of actually, but it's not coming out till next week, called For the Love of Learning, which is largely about women, Keyan women in different generations talking to each other about subjects. And we've had some photographic portraits which are all women, because you walk into Keys Hall, which you can't at the moment because it's being refurbished, and there are all men on the walls. And I really do believe that Caitlin Moran had it right when she said you can't be what you can't see. I was an undergraduate at Newnham, and we had women's portraits on the wall, apart from Hedgeridge District. And it just didn't occur to me, really, as an undergraduate at Newnham in 1980, that women couldn't do anything. My first supervisor was a woman professor. I came back to do my PhD in 86 to Keys, a rather different college, and you suddenly think, oh, hold on a minute, are there any women at this college? So, you know, we're getting more pictures on the walls, and I'd like it to just be more diverse so that people can see what they can be.
Yeah, I think that's very important. I think I noticed that, and but I think also 16-year-old girls who come from the northeast notice it,
yeah,
and that's really important. And they've said they're quite talkative. They'll say, "What's going on here? Why isn't there women up here?" So, you know, we'll get to it.
So I do think people find it quite exciting when they come, if I may say, you know, to Girton Dining Hall. It is all women. It is a mixed college. You know, it's not a very it's not as diverse a group of women on the walls as you want, and you'd want a more diverse, you know, hanging of pictures if that's what you're going to carry on doing. But there is something very powerful about going to one of the largest dining halls in Cambridge, and there's a story behind that, and it being, you know, having women on the walls. I think it sends a message out, which is an important message in the mix of things. So.
And sorry. Jesus did just get our first woman on the wall, didn't we, recently?
We did, yes, we did get our first. Lisa Jardine is now up on the wall. She replaced Henry VIII.
I think there's something about that that she would have really liked, actually.
I think we still only have men in the union office, actually. It might have to change. Is there? Oh, we have one. We have Princess Anne.
Oh, well, that's fine then. That's okay.
Brilliant. I think we have time for one more question. Over there, I think you had your hand up for a while.
Is that her or me?
The woman.
So speaking of portraits, we're trying to get our first female portrait at Clare at the moment, but have been kind of jumping over lots of hurdles to make that happen. Do you find that, as the master, it can be challenging to be progressive when the colleges are so bureaucratic in their structure?
Well, I have to say I've heard this rumour about bureaucracy in colleges. I haven't come across it yet, Jesus, actually. I'm just being honest. Maybe in 3 years' time I'll be saying that. But there's a structure of governance. Lots of organisations have a structure of governance and a way of doing things. So I'm just really beginning to understand that. But what I find is laying a groundwork of change is the important thing, because then and also any change you want to bring in, first you have to have a culture of change, and in order to get a culture of change you just change things, and then people are like, oh, things are changing, and suddenly they're like, oh, I've got an idea for change, and they kind of do it as well. And so their kind of idea about the speed at which you can change things is fine, and most of the good ideas are actually already in the organisation anyway. But what they're waiting for is an environment for people to feel they can come forward with those good ideas, and then it's fun to do things a bit differently. So I'm not finding it too bureaucratic. And I worked on the BBC Trust. This is nothing. This is fine.
There's a very slim book that you can get from Cambridge University Press called Microcosmographica Academia, which is written at the turn of the 20th century with all sorts of delaying tactics and avoidance tactics, and the way in which academics call on principle or maybe doctrine if it's not quite the right time to do that, and these sorts of things. And those are still in a... I wouldn't say bureaucratic, I think just in a small c, conservative, slightly resistant to change. It's all working perfectly well, so why should we? And I think Sonita's right, that really doing the groundwork for making the case for why change is a good thing, it actually achieves change better. I think it's incredibly difficult for students because you're only here for 3 years. And sometimes it just takes a little bit longer than that to get something. I've had not battles, more differences of opinion, which perhaps haven't always gone my way. Yeah, I wish I could laugh about it, which sometimes I feel quite downcast about. But I think a friend of mine reminded me, and it's a very good thing, and I think Sonita's in a very good position. She's newly elected, and you have to remember that it is an election. There's not an appointment to master in my college. The fellows elected me. They definitely knew what they were getting. I'd been there for 30 years, so presumably they did actually, or do want me to do some change stuff, because if they'd wanted a very traditional no change person, then they would have elected someone else. So I'm just hoping that I have managed to get 2 portraits on the walls so far.
And sometimes the change can be, actually, this tradition needs to be better and with more gusto. At the end, when I say, Jesus, the grace is very sure, I say Laus Deo. A little bit of mumbling going on, and I think the Jesuits in the audience know what I'm talking about. It's kind of like, come back with a little bit more gusto. And I have to do kind of like grace lessons to kind of go, yeah, we're going to own this, and we like this tradition, we're just going to go for it.
Yeah, the governance systems can be quite clunky. I can't get why you can't get a picture on the wall. I think there's got to be a way, really.
You do guerrilla pictures.
Just go and just put one up.
Put one up. Stick one on the scaffolding. Miniatures.
We actually do have time for one last question. If I'm aware that a man hasn't asked a question, if they do want to. Yeah, go on.
Yay.
Thanks. I'm sorry for this question, Sonita, because you've only been in the role for a term, but a lot of people might look at, people who are not yet masters, or, who think, oh yeah, in my career, I'll do these things, and then I'll become the master of a college, and that, to many people looking upwards, may look like the sort of peak of your career. What do you think of life after masterhood or mistresshood?
After master. Yeah, I don't feel I've peaked. This is a job. It's a way of life. It's a community, and it's in a way, it's I used to live in South East London. I now live in Cambridge at Jesus. That's my home. I'll do other things. I'm always on other boards and etc. And I like film. I might write a book here. I might do another film. So I think it's you just change position. You're doing more. I don't know if they'll let me have any other days because they work you really hard. It's just 8 a.m. till 10 o'clock. But I enjoy it. I like every day being different. It doesn't feel like that I've peaked at all. And I don't know what I'll do afterwards. It's 10 years, and I think it's going to go really quickly. But I think I'm enjoying it. I have no expectations about the role in that, you want it to be good. You expect it to be good. And having met everyone at Jesus before saying yes, there's a good chance it will be. But I do let every moment wash over. This is great. This has been a lovely, couple of hours. Tomorrow I'll do something different. Got casting directors coming tomorrow for lunch, and 35 students coming to kind of have a intimate time with them. Every day is different, and so I think it's going to be fine. It doesn't feel like a peak. It just feels like it's where I live. That's what it feels like. It's where I live, and I don't know what I'll do over the 10 years and outside of it as well. Feels good.
Did you want to hear from the rest of us?
I do.
Okay. Mine's also a 10-year term. And from some amazing alchemy, I was 57 when I was elected, so I'll be 67, which is the sort of natural retirement age, when I finish as master. I've made it absolutely clear that I will not be a life fellow, that I will step back from governance of the college, because I think really it's the working fellowship who should do that, not the older fellows, although they do a lot of work. And I'm rather looking forward. I'll still not be that old at 67. I'm no doubt some of my many children will have grandchildren, or at least a couple of them are insisting that they won't have children. So that will be quite fun. There'll still be lots of law to do, and one of the worst things about being master is I've been unable to do as much academic law as I've done up to now. But one can't do everything, and it's a surprisingly heavy job. I've got students coming to brunch tomorrow morning, and then I've got a dinner in the evening with some alum. So it is pretty 24/7 during term. So I'm sure I would quite like to step back from that. But there are lots of other things I enjoy doing, whether it's singing or walking the dogs, or putting a bit more back into the community. There's lots of things to do other than be master, I think.
As I was saying to some people just before, actually, I've never had a plan. No. I didn't have a plan to be the mistress, and I haven't got a plan now, so...
Something will turn up, Mr. McCormick.
Something brilliant will happen.
Okay, no plans. That's a great way to end, I think. Okay, so thank you everyone so much for coming, and I think we can give a round of applause to our brilliant panel.
Thank you.
Thank you. And just a reminder that our term card is coming out on Monday, so keep an eye out for that. Click go in on Facebook, and we'll see you at union events soon. Thanks.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you.